Efeosa was an incredible hairstylist in the bustling city of Lagos. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that if Efeosa touched your hair, you would leave with a beautiful, neat hairstyle that would make people look at you twice. Efeosa wasn't just an ordinary hairstylist, she had a special gift. People said her mother was the best hairstylist of her time, and Efeosa had inherited that talent. But Efeosa's skills were even better. Her hands were like magic, and anyone who sat in her chair would walk out with a style that made them feel proud. Every morning, people would gather at her shop, chatting and waiting for their turn. Her shop was small, but it was always full. Sometimes, Efeosa would start working early in the morning before the sun even came up. Because people didn't mind waking up early just to make sure she styled their hair first. As the years passed, Efeosa expanded from a small shop to a big salon. After her expansion, Efeosa's shop was now known not just for the beautiful hairstyles she created, but also for the unique way she ran her business. She had one strict rule that everyone who came to make hair from her knew. No one was allowed to bring their own hair kit, like combs, mirrors, or other tools, into her shop. Customers often wondered why, but Efeosa was firm about it. Before anyone could step into her shop, Efeosa would gently ask them to hand over their bags. She would then carefully check each one, making sure no combs, mirrors, or sectioning combs were hidden inside. If she found anything, she would politely ask the person to leave it outside before they could come in. One day, a curious and new customer, Omamuzo, asked, "Efeosa, why don't you allow customers to bring their own hair kits? We know you're the best, but sometimes we want to use our own things." Efeosa smiled and replied, "My sister, it's not that I don't trust you. But you see, every tool I use in my shop is special. If I allow some customers to bring their kits, others might not feel special, and I don't want that." Omamuzo nodded in agreement and the discussion ended there. One day, Omamuzo tried to sneak a small comb into the shop. As she walked in, Efeosa's sharp eyes caught sight of the comb sticking out from Omamuzo's bag. "Please, Omamuzo," Efeosa said gently, "you'll have to leave that comb outside before you come in." Omamuzo was surprised and a little embarrassed, but she respected Efeosa's request. After she left the comb outside, she sat in the chair, and Efeosa went to work on her hair. When Omamuzo saw her reflection in Efeosa's mirror afterward, she loved what she saw. The hairstyle was more beautiful than she could have imagined. Over time, as the day went by, Efeosa's customers came to trust her ways. They understood that her rules were not just for show but were part of what made her the best. This trust from Efeosa's customers didn't happen overnight. She earned her customers' trust. Every evening, after her last customer had left and the shop was quiet, she and her workers would begin her nightly routine. They would gather all the combs, brushes, scissors, and other tools they had used throughout the day, and take them to a small corner of her salon, where she kept a basin of hot water mixed with herbs and natural disinfectants. Then one by one, they would carefully wash each tool, scrubbing them with care. After the tools were dry, Efeosa would store them in a special box lined with soft cloth, ensuring they were ready for use the next day. Seeing this made her customers stop bringing their own hair kits and simply enjoy the experience of sitting in Efeosa's chair, knowing that she would work her magic with her own tools. As the years progressed, Efeosa's salon continued to flourish. She expanded again to a bigger place. Her salon now became a place where people not only came to get their hair done, but also to be part of something special. It wasn't long before word spread beyond the vicinity about her extraordinary skills, her meticulous care, and the unique atmosphere she had created. As a result, her salon was always full, with people patiently queuing outside, waiting their turn, even though there were other stylists in the vicinity who were not as busy. Now, it wasn't that the other stylists weren't good at what they did. In fact, many of them had been in the business for years, and they knew all the latest styles. But Efeosa's touch was different. It wasn't just about the hair alone, it was about the entire experience. From the moment a customer walked into her salon, they felt a sense of calm, a feeling that they were in the hands of someone who genuinely cared about making them look and feel their best. As people queued outside, they would chat and laugh, sharing stories and news from the city. There was always a lively atmosphere, with children playing nearby and women exchanging recipes and gossip. No one minded the wait because they knew that once they sat in Efeosa's chair, it would be worth it. Sometimes, people would arrive early in the morning just to secure a spot, knowing that Efeosa's shop would be busy all day. Others would bring their friends or family members, turning the trip into a social event. Even though the other hairstylists in the vicinity were available and had open chairs, people preferred to wait for Efeosa. They knew that what they would receive in her shop was more than just a hairstyle, it was a piece of her magic, her care, and her dedication. Now, the other stylists noticed, of course. Some were puzzled, others envious. They couldn't understand why people would choose to wait for hours when they could get their hair done right away somewhere else. A few of them even tried to copy Efeosa's methods, adopting her practice of sterilizing tools or setting up their shops in a similar way. But no matter what they did, they couldn't capture the essence of what made Efeosa's salon so special. One warm afternoon, Efeosa's salon was as busy as ever. The usual crowd gathered outside, chatting and waiting for their turn. Inside the salon, Efeosa moved from one customer to the next, her hands weaving through hair with practiced ease. The salon was buzzing with conversation, the sound of combs and women's laughter. A few minutes later, Efeosa's daughter, Efeosa, walked into the salon. She had just come in from school. With a shy smile, she approached her mother and asked, "Mama, can you braid my hair later today?" Efeosa looked at her daughter with affection. "Of course, my dear," she said, "when you are well rested." A few hours later, Efeosa sat in the chair and Efeosa got to work. When she finished, Efeosa's hair was styled in neat, intricate braids that framed her face perfectly. She looked at herself in the mirror and beamed. "Thank you, Mama," she said, jumping up to hug her mother. Then, without hesitation, Efeosa took the brand new comb she had just used and walked over to the small trash bin in the corner of the shop. She broke the comb and sectioning comb and dropped them into the bin. A regular customer, who had been watching the whole scene with interest, couldn't hide her surprise. She looked at Efeosa with wide eyes and asked, "Efeosa, why did you throw away that new comb? It was perfectly good, and you only used it once." Efeosa turned to the woman and gave her a gentle smile. "Yes, it was a good comb, and I used it to braid my daughter's hair," she began. "But in my shop, I have a tradition. Any tool that touches the hair of my family, especially my daughter's, is used only once. I don't use the same comb for anyone else, not even my customers. It's my way of keeping my work pure and special." The woman blinked, processing what Efeosa had said. "But, it's just a comb," she said, still puzzled. "Surely it could be cleaned and used again." Efeosa nodded, understanding the woman's confusion. "You're right, it could be cleaned and used again. But for me, it's not just about the comb. It's about the love and care I put into my work. I have to respect my customers' tools. What if the comb gets mixed up with other combs?" The customer nodded to what Efeosa said even though she still looked puzzled. As the days passed, the story of what had happened in Efeosa's shop began to spread throughout the town. At first, it was whispered in hushed tones among those who had been there that day, but soon, the tale took on a life of its own, twisting and turning as it passed from one person to another. People began to wonder if Efeosa's skills weren't just the result of hard work and talent but something more sinister. While the majority of people didn't believe the rumors, others whispered that Efeosa's dedication to her work, her insistence on using only her combs, and her nightly cleaning rituals were all signs of something diabolical. "I don't know if I can go back to her salon," one woman confessed to her friend. "What if she's been using those combs to control us, to steal our hair for her dark rituals? Because why would she break and then throw away the comb she used for her daughter's hair when she could have just kept it and reused it another time?" The friend nodded, her face pale. "It's frightening, isn't it? We've all trusted her with our hair, but who knows what she's really doing behind closed doors." As the story spread, even those who didn't believe the rumors couldn't help but feel uneasy. Efeosa's reputation, once built on love and care, now had a shadow hanging over it. Some customers stopped coming altogether, afraid of what they might be walking into. Others still visited but with wary eyes and guarded hearts, unsure of what to think. Efeosa didn't notice the change, nor the way some people looked at her differently now. Their smiles a bit strained, their conversations a bit more guarded. She couldn't feel the weight of their suspicion, as no one told her about the rumors because of the favors they got from her. Moreover, more customers flooded into her salon, so Efeosa didn't notice anything. They all just smiled, greeted her and went their own way. On another warm afternoon, the sun bathed Efeosa's salon in a golden glow, and as usual, her salon was filled with the hum of conversation and the familiar sound of Efeosa's beads tapping against her wrist. Efeosa had come to the shop again after school, her face lighting up as she saw her mother. "Mama, can you braid my hair today?" Efeosa asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. Efeosa smiled, the same warm smile she always gave her daughter. "Of course, my dear," she replied, reaching for a brand new comb from her tool shelf. As always, she had carefully selected this comb just for Efeosa, its fine teeth perfect for gliding through her daughter's thick hair. But, just as Efeosa began to part Efeosa's hair, a message came into her phone, and while she was reading it, her phone rang. It was an important call that she couldn't ignore. She gently placed the comb on the shelf and said to her daughter, "I'll be right back, Efeosa. Stay here, and I'll finish your hair as soon as I'm done." Efeosa nodded, watching her mother walk to the back of the shop to take the call. She sat patiently in the chair, her feet swinging as she waited. One of Efeosa's workers, Amora, noticed Efeosa sitting alone and decided to help out. Thinking she could speed things up for Efeosa as persuaded by a customer whose hair she was making, Amora left the customer's hair and picked up a comb from the client's station. A comb that had been used earlier in the day, and began to braid Efeosa's hair. When Efeosa returned, her call finished, she saw Amora halfway through braiding Efeosa's hair with the used comb. Her heart froze, and a deep, overwhelming sense of dread took hold of her. She knew the comb Amora held in her hand. It was one of the combs that she had used on a customer earlier that day. A wave of anger surged through her, mixing with an intense fear that made her voice tremble as she shouted, "Amora, stop! Drop that comb, now!" The entire salon fell silent. Everyone turned to look at Efeosa, their eyes wide with shock at the uncharacteristic outburst. Amora, her face pale, immediately dropped the comb, her hands shaking as it clattered to the floor. "What have you done?" Efeosa's voice was sharp, her eyes burning with a mix of fear and anger. She rushed to Efeosa, gently pulling her daughter away from the chair and inspecting her hair with frantic care. Her fingers shook as they undid the braids Amora had started, her mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. "Mama, what's wrong?" Efeosa asked, her voice small and scared as she looked up at her mother. Efeosa's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her daughter. "I'm so sorry, Efeosa," she whispered, her heart aching with guilt. She turned to Amora, who stood frozen with fear. Those combs, they, for a reason, and now." She didn't finish the sentence, her thoughts too chaotic to form words, before she was interrupted by Osaritin, the customer who Amora was making hair for. So it is true. They are saying you're diabolical. I wanted to see if the rumors were true. That you've been using evil combs in your shop and you have powers that aren't natural. Power you were afraid would be unleashed on your own child. That's why you broke the comb you used on your child in your salon and every comb you've been using for her at home. Those words spoken by Osaritin hit Efeosa like a blow. How did you find out, Osaritin? Efeosa asked, tears in her eyes as the whole crowd in the salon gasped. Osaritin took a step closer and said, "You want to know how I found out, Efeosa? About the evil combs and your little rituals? Well, I found out because I was the one who asked someone to send a text message first and fake that call. To create a situation where you'd be forced to pull away from your daughter's hair and reveal your true self. And you did, didn't you? You panicked when you saw the same combo used for your customer's hair on your daughter's hair because you knew those combs had power, dark power. You're afraid of them, and you've been using them in this salon, on your customers, for who knows what purposes. No wonder you don't allow any combs or hair kits in your salon. Your workers have also been talking about how you don't allow them to wash and keep any comb you use for your daughter's hair at home. Instead, you break every comb you use for her whenever you made her hair, even though they were always brand new." The salon fell silent, the air thick with tension. Efeosa's eyes widened in shock, her mind reeling as she processed what Osaritin had just confessed. She didn't know her workers who come to her house and pretend as if they didn't see anything had been spreading rumors about her. The whole salon continued to rumble with noise as Efeosa, who couldn't handle the commotion, immediately rushed out of her salon with Efeosa and drove away. A few days passed and Efeosa didn't come to her salon nor was she seen at her house. Same thing with her daughter, she wasn't seen at school either. It wasn't until a week had passed and no one had seen both Efeosa and her daughter that the neighborhood began to whisper and wonder what had happened. Where was she? Where was her daughter? No one knew. They called, Efeosa didn't pick, neither did she return anybody's calls. Where was Efeosa? Everyone wondered. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm orange glow through the windows of Efeosa's salon, one evening, Efeosa drove to her salon. She was looking really pale, stressed and tired. Her hair was rumpled and she had lost some weight. Everyone looked in surprise as this was not the Efeosa that they knew. The Efeosa that has always been known for her extraordinary talent with hair. The Efeosa that her salon was the go-to place for the most intricate braids, the most flawless weaves. The Efeosa with grace, demure and steeze. This wasn't the Efeosa standing before them. What happened? Efeosa stood before everyone present with a sorrowful expression and began to talk. Today was time to reveal the secret behind her success, a secret she could no longer keep hidden. Taking a deep breath, Efeosa looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each of her customers, some of whom had been with her from the very beginning. "I have something to tell you," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Something that I've been hiding for a long time. You all know how quickly this salon became successful," Efeosa continued, her gaze dropping to the floor. "How it seemed like people couldn't stay away, like they were drawn here by some invisible force." She paused, struggling to find the right words. "What you don't know is that it wasn't just my skill that brought you all here. I used dark powers." A collective gasp filled the room, disbelief etched on the faces of her customers. Efeosa forced herself to continue. "Years ago, when I was struggling to make ends meet, I was desperate. I wanted this salon to succeed so badly that I went to see a powerful man who claimed he could help. He performed rituals, gave me charms, and promised that my salon would thrive, but at a price. The price was that none of my customers must come into my salon with their own hair kit. I must use the combs and any hair kit given to me by him on my customers. This is because the more I used those combs, the richer I will become. I have spirits I worship, and your hair is what feeds those spirits. So, the more I feed them, the richer I become. But he gave me a warning that none of my flesh and blood must use the same comb as my customers, otherwise the charm will be destroyed and I will become poorer than a church rat. But if I don't want to be poorer than a church rat, then I must confess what I've done, but I will still lose all the wealth I have acquired. That was why I screamed the day Amora used the comb on my daughter's hair. I've been at the barber's place for weeks, cleansing my daughter and selling my properties one after the other. Efeosa cried. The silence after Efeosa's confession was deafening. When the atmosphere regained its strength, some of the women she had made hair for in the past began to scream and hit her with their bags and anything they could find. It took the kind heart of some good Samaritans not to lynch Efeosa as they hurriedly put her in her car and drove her away. As the days went by, Efeosa lost all the wealth she had acquired and moved out of that vicinity because she couldn't walk without people giving her bitter stares and remarks, or pouring water and other things on her. Now this story teaches us to be vigilant with where we make our hairs and who we allow to make our hair. Now, every salon has its rules and regulations, and not all salons are into fetish practices or are diabolical, but always make inquiries about a salon and still be vigilant. Your hair, your pride. Guide it with all jealousy. Thank you for joining me on this story. I appreciate your attentive ears. Please support us by sharing, liking and sharing our videos to your friends and loved ones. With love from African Tales by Dami.